Hello guys, welcome back to Dharma Geosphere. Today I'll be interacting with you on another very important topic in geomorphology related to the concept of geomorphic cycles and the landscape development. Please remember, this is all one title, concept of geomorphic cycles and landscape development. So we will see, unlike what is routinizedly told about the geomorphic cycles of Davis, Penck, King, etc. We will look into the new models of the landscape development because as you see in the syllabus it is not mentioned, any name is not mentioned of any particular geomorphic cycle, though very routinely everybody is talking about only those three. It is not that only those three key classical or I would say philosophical kind of geomorphic cycles that have been generally dealt. It is considered that probably Davis was the father of the landscape development, but it is not so. As you will see, it was actually Powell who developed basic concepts of geomorphic cycles like the base level, the peneplain, and the evolution of landforms in a cyclic way. So we will consider first what is a geomorphic cycle or a geographic cycle. To be more precise, geographic cycle is basically a transformation of a recently uplifted land mass to a sloping land mass to a series of erosional episodes. So after we have understood what is geomorphic cycle or a geographic cycle, we will try to understand what are the various models of landscape development. One, as I said, is that physical or the philosophical models or the qualitative models. We have starting from Powell, then Gilbert, then you have Davies, you have King cycle, then you have Penck, you have also other different models, say for example the revisited Gilbert's model, and you also have a model devoted to the principal types of landslides involved erosion cycle, etc. And then you have the physical models wherein the idea of what is called as doing some kind of an experiment in a small scale is being dealt in the physical models. And then of course you have numeric models where statistical and mathematical methods are used to understand a particular landform and how particularly the erosion has affected this landform. So we'll go through all these various models and then understand how they are. So please, when any question related to the landscape development or the concepts of geomorphic cycles comes, bring in the dynamic and the new models in your answer instead of writing the same old Davis, Penck and King. So we'll now see some of the slides. Please pay attention, try to listen it here itself and complete as we move on to the next chapters. So the arrangement of phenomena of erosion into an orderly evolutionary sequences illustrative of cyclic changes of the development of landforms is what is the cycle of erosion. William Davies, one of the first to actually have referred to the whole sequence of transformation of landforms as a cycle of erosion. It was the first ever modern theory of landscape development. Its central concept was the transformation of a recently uplifted landmass into a gently sloping land through sequence of erosional episodes. So according to Davies, it is assumed that the uplift takes place quickly and the geomorphic process gradually wear down the raw topography little by little to an extensive flat region close to the base level. So this is the graphical representation of erosion cycle. When you are presenting this, though this is a very old and often repeated in almost all the textbooks and other content, so don't bother too much about this. But if you are making this graphical representation, please indicate and give all the labeling of the graphical representation. So now we move on to landscape development, which is the main core of the topic, and we will see, as I said, though the thoughts of landscape development were mostly dominated by the classical philosophical based arguments of Davies, Penck, King and Hack, but on the other hand, geomorphology was slowly becoming more quantitative, and the number of process studies was growing rapidly during that time, and those can't be ignored and have to be taken into account while considering the models of the landscape development. So landscape evolution model come in two basic flavors. One is the qualitative and the other is quantitative, that can be applied across a wide range of spatial and temporal scales. So if you have to see landscape development models, they can be divided into three broad categories. One is the qualitative or the philosophical model, the other is the physical model, and the third is the numeric or superficial model. So the qualitative models tend to describe the long-term changes in the shape, size and relief of landforms over the continental or subcontinental regions. They are not rooted in the principles of physics or math, and they are strongly colored by the perception and interception of the geographic point of view. The qualitative philosophical methods can be divided into several models. One is the Powell's model. Powell was the first geomorphic model that was presented for the development of landscape. And then it was Gilbert, Davies, Penck, King, Heck, and last was the Bull model. The Powell's model is simple. He was the true father of the principles of landscape evolution, many of which are incorrectly attributed to William Morris Davies. Powell's views on landscape evolution are vividly described in the accounts of his expeditions through the river gorges of the Rocky Mountains and the Colorado Plateau. The concept of base level is nothing but where beyond which the erosion cannot happen. It's mostly at the sea level, and the widespread erosion of great mountain ranges to the low elevation and relief are cornerstones of Powell's work, and because of which he is regarded as the true father of the principles of landscape evolution. The great unconformity of the Grand Canyon forced Powell to appreciate the enormity. Unconformity is nothing but a kind of a missing link between two rock layers, could be of probably different age. So one probably age is missing. What could have happened is in the earlier land mass, erosion might have happened and removed the entire upper layer, and above that another layer would have come, and so one could have been Paleozoic, other could have been Precambrian, so the missing Mesozoic is probably missing. So that part is called an unconformity, and one of the greatest unconformity we see is in the Grand Canyon, as you can see it here. This is the base level, level below which erosion cannot occur and above which deposition does not take place. And this is the Grand Canyon, this is the great unconformity. You can see these are the flat layers, yellow layers, and these are the tilted layers. Both are of different ages. Then the Gilbert model is another very important model which came before Davies. It is perhaps one of the most lasting impact on modern geomorphology. The core of Gilbert's work on landscape evolution was elegantly laid out in the monograph on the geology of the Henry Mountains, Utah, and you can see I have quoted the Josselson 1980 paper, which describes the importance of the Gilbert paper. So he particularly noteworthy of what Gilbert's ideas about the processes and rates of erosion was that the landform evolution and drainage adjustment was matched, and he showed how channels transfer tipping sedimentary rocks of variable resistance, and also how the courses adjust to maximize interaction with soft rocks and minimize interaction with hard rocks. And then Davies was careful. A lot of criticism happened after Penck had come about the Great Davies cycle, but it is not so. Davies was very careful, and he pointed out that his model was an idealized one. It was a very generic one, and it did not apply to all the places. So he had three main publications. One was related to the rivers and valleys of Pennsylvania, which focuses on the development of evolution of the current drainage patterns there. And the second, and what is more important and relevant to us, is the second paper on the geographic cycle, where the Daviesian model for long-term landscape evolution is described. You all might have seen this in many papers and many textbooks. You have to put this geographic cycle. And then came the third one, was on the pediment bench lands, where Davies confronts a major alternative paradigm with your geographic cycle, and he presented the ideas of Penck as well. And the concept of geographical cycle recognizes the possibility of reduction of relief during the life history of a landscape by the process of several episodes of erosion occurring in a sequence of orderly changes. This is one point you should write. And you can also write that a cycle is usually regarded as constituting the sequence of changes from an initial state via a series of stages to an ultimate low basic level state. Then an important idea that has survived from the geographical cycle is that slopes in tectonically active landscape rapidly attain steep, almost straight profiles, then move slowly decay into concave or convex sigmoid shaped profiles as tectonism wanes. So Penck was influenced by field observations made in Germany, particularly the Rhine-Graben area in the northern Argentina. For him, it was more of a process-oriented evolution of landforms. Making measurements in the field, he focused his process studies on the hill slopes. Penck, of course, was the first to recognize in the field and measure it the concave or convex hill slope, similar to what Davies was observing in the North American plains. So this is the Penck model. You can draw this and describe the caption. Then Penck's theory of crustal change and slope development. You can put these two diagrams which differentiate between the steep slopes and the shallow slopes, the difference between Davies and Penck. And then this the same in a much clearer. So this is the next comes King, who instead of peneplain talked about pediplanation, and he drew the work conducted primarily in Africa. King championed a model for a long-term landscape evolution very similar to the geographic cycle of Davies, but he emphasized impulsive uplift and long response times of landscape adjustment. King never accepted the Daviesian concave or convex slope. Instead, he favored Penck's view of concave hill slope and slope replacement or slope retreat. This is the King. You can draw this diagram and give the caption. Then Hack's equilibrium model is also important. Eventually what Davies and even Penck said that the landforms attain a state of equilibrium before again getting uplifted. He proposed that landscapes are in equilibrium as the same driving and resisting forces over a long period of time. They are time independent, resulting in a characteristic land. He brought in the landscape where river and hill slopes are all graded, and the process acting on the interflows and the channel bottoms, although different, are lowering their respective parts of landscape at the same rate, not like differential rate as propounded by Penck. So this is the equilibrium theory, variations in influence of crustal movement and resistance of the underlying rock. Slope forms adjust to geomorphic process to achieve the energy balance. So the Hack model predicts accordant summits, that is summits which are artificial and not actually have attained. It's just only the uplift or subsidence that happened to show those summits to be bigger than what they are. And they have to be the most resistant rocks are what attain those summits, because the similar process have established themselves on slopes and on rocks sharing similar structure over a long period of time. So this is the another invariant equilibrium model you can show, this diagram. And then the linkage model of Bull. Bull here proposes a process linkage, which refers to the direct or indirect ways in which individual components of a watershed mutually respond to an external driving force, the two most obvious being tectonics and climate. And then, unlike other models of landscape evolution that focus on the evolution of hill slope forms, here the process linkage focuses more on watershed and the other nearby landforms. The climate change is an important control on sediment creation and routing affects watersheds at all spatial scales. So the Bull model considers weathering and the production rate of regolith, the liberation of that regolith of the hill slopes, the response time, thresholds and equilibrium, all interacting in the watershed level at the primary control on the resulting alluvial flange stratigraphy. So there is a reaction time and there is also a relaxation time. As you can see here, both the reaction and the relaxation time are given. When the hill slopes begin to liberate regolith, it is affected by the overall climatic regime depending on whether it is arid, semi-arid or glaciated. The physical models are scale representation of landforms. As you can see, here is a flume. Flume is nothing but an example of a physical model used extensively to understand channel form and process. An artificial flume is created to simulate a river type of action and understanding how the channels behave and the water flows through them. So a flue is nothing but a human-made channel for water in the form of an open declined gravity chute whose walls are raised above the surrounding terrain. So flume experiment studies have proved very important for developing the landscape evolution theories, particularly related to the drainage landform. For example, it would be very easy to build a model river channel in a flume with scaled down grain size and density, and then try to see how the real channels behave in the simulated natural conditions. So there are three broad classes of the physical models. One is the segment of unscaled reality, one other is the scale model, and the other is analog models. The segment of unscaled reality does not imply that the model is constructed at some scale very different from what we see in the real world, but it refers to a model that can actually be of a natural system, like the segment of an alluvial river channel is considered representative of a broader range of river channel in the form of fossils and geography. And then an example of widely used segment of unscaled reality model is by the agricultural engineers in the universal soil loss equation. Then you have scale models where an attempt to reproduce natural landforms in such a way that the ratios of significant dimensions and forces are equal to those found in nature. True scale models are difficult to construct because of limited nature of fluid and substrate material. And then you example of Jurassic tank at the University of Minnesota St. Anthony's Falls Laboratory illustrates a scale model dedicated to the study of depositional landforms and the resulting underlying stratigraphy. The analog models are designed to mimic a given natural phenomena without having to reproduce the same driving forces, processes or materials. Examples include modeling the flow of glaciers using oatmeal or modeling landslides using flume filled with veins. A numeric model describes landscape evolution by representing a geomorphic process, multiple processes or landscape characteristic as a mathematical expression. A typical numeric strategy renders a landscape as a rasterized arrangement of cells whose elevation above a base level is determined by one or more mathematical equations that govern the addition, or removal of mass from one of the cells. So there are several different types of numeric models that have been developed over the past 3 decades. The rapid expansion into studies of landscape evolution has been greatly enhanced by the use of computers and laptops. So there are 3 major types of numeric landscape evolution models. One is the surrogate model, the other is the multi-process model, and the third is the coupled geodynamic surface process model. A surrogate model typically tracks a single metric of landscape such as mean elevation or mean relief, and does not discriminate between various processes that redistribute mass in real landscapes. The multi-process model is much more useful, and it attempts to isolate and represent all the processes that contribute to the redistribution of mass with individual mathematical equations for each segment of that mass. So a recent trend is to link the robust multi-process model with the geodynamic models of deformation of the Earth's crust to yield coupled geodynamic surface process model, and has been extensively used in structural geology. And then a true coupled model is one where the surface process model predicts lateral mass fluxes throughout the model landscape, and the corresponding geodynamic model calculates the solid earth mass fluxes in response to the surface processes and as a consequence of tectonic forces or velocity fields between the geodynamic and the surfacial numerically modeled processes. So third is, this is the numeric process model on how it is done. These are the various places where the data is collected, and all these models treat erosion as proportional to the local relief and mean elevation or local gradient and hydrology as shown in the figure. So this is the basic principle underlying all the multi-process where the mass conservation of mass is taken. The major processes are represented mathematically in model landscapes. So this is the erosional response, as you can see, to tectonic forcing in a model landscape. If the landscape time of the landscape is faster than the time scale of the tectonic vertebration, you can see a concave model. So that is all about the numeric models. What is done is, it is just not that they depend only on the numerical data or the mathematical equation calculated for a mass or a segment of a landscape, but they also match it with the field study and a geodynamic model developed. So it's a kind of the geodynamic models or models developed through fieldwork being supplemented by the numeric studies. So that gives a more accurate way of understanding the way the landscape has developed. So you should use a combination of both qualitative methods as well as the physical methods as well as the numeric methods to get a much clearer and a much broader and a comprehensive picture of how landscapes develop. So that is all guys for this lecture. Please try to update yourself about the landscape development by going through these new models, and now you have all the basic content of the new models. Try to write about them in case any questions related to the concepts in geomorphic cycle or the landscape development comes. So with this, we'll end this lecture. I'm also waiting, like you all, for the advertisement to come. Once it comes, we'll see if there has been any change in the syllabus, and then accordingly we'll move on. In any case, we will try to complete the most important topics and difficult topics in the geography optional, both paper 1 and paper 2. Okay guys, and goodbye, and catch up, stay focused and stay healthy. Bye.